going to start with a story. It's a bit strange to talk. I'm not going to use any slides. I hope you don't mind. I just want to talk to you for a little while. But 2 years ago, I'm one of those sort of crazy people who likes to run. And then, of course, people who like to run like to find strange ways to run. I like to run up and down mountains. And I was training for the Mont Blanc Ultra. And so, of course, it's a little bit of a challenge. But my daughter wanted to come and be part of my support team. She's 21 years old at the time, and she wasn't able to come. Like I had to go up at 3,000 meters and keep training until I could get used to the oxygen. Because here in Belgium, at 50 meters altitude, you don't really get much air the same way. And so she wasn't able to come up well in advance, but she was trying to figure out a way to get to Chamonix in a fairly reasonable way and meet me and be part of the support group. And she couldn't find a cheap way, but she managed to find a person, a man who was going to be driving all night the night before to come up from Brussels to Chamonix. And, well, like any parent, of course, I have a quite attractive young daughter, the idea of her sitting in a car all night with a strange man didn't seem to appeal to me. So I expressed that to her, and her attitude was, "It's okay, Papa. He's got a great rating." It's like, what? We today trust, and we would get into a car with a strange man and drive all night across Europe because somebody else gave him a great rating. My Uber driver this morning, who took me here, has had 5,000 five-star ratings. I liked him already before I even got into the car. So what's happening today now is we have another model of trust, and we have to understand that when we go to the cinema, we don't listen to what the film producers say about it or what the film reviewers or critics say anymore. We listen to what our friends say. We will rent out our sofas to complete strangers according to the ratings we have. So everybody now is going around rating everyone else. When you got into your hotel, you checked the ratings to see what people like you were saying. So this is the blockchain in action. Now, I know some of you are perhaps mathematicians, and you know very well that the blockchain is, not exactly that, because there are people involved trying to sell you an app. But it's more or less the situation that everybody now, peers, are rating everyone else. That's why transparency is so important for us today. Because with transparency, we expect that every rating is true. Uber lost its right to operate in London because they did not declare 2 cases of sexual abuse in their cars. Automatic, not transparent, must stop. So we were talking yesterday about the importance of transparency. We can see it's important because of the blockchain. But how does this work? How does this work? If we're no longer trusting the expert, we're no longer trusting the authority, we are now trusting people like us. People from our tribe, people who are able to say, I agree, this is safe, or I support this. This is something different, and I think we have to be aware that this is tied very much to the revolution that we have, the communication revolution we have today. We are no longer relying on the authorities. How does that work? Well, today, we're more and more finding ourselves communicating not as part of society, but as part of our tribe. Once again, the algorithms of the blockchain have determined more or less where our tribe is. Stop and think for a moment of a simple search. Whenever I feel vulnerable, I don't understand something, I go to my friend Google. And I will go to Google, and I will ask a question. The question might be something like, will vaccines give my child autism? Now, Google is not going to try to educate me. Okay, Google wants to be my friend. So Google is going to send me to a site that Google understands I want to go to. And that's based on all of the past searches that I've had. It's based on the types of people I associate with. It's based on that whole system that the algorithms of my last search histories will say, this is where David wants to go. Google's not going to say, don't be stupid. Don't vaccinate your children. No. If I'm vulnerable, that's why I'm searching on Google, because I don't understand something, so I need something I can trust. Google is going to send me where Google thinks, or the algorithms think, I'll find the answer I'm most happy with. By the way, has anyone here ever checked for a spelling word on Google? Yeah, so what happens? Does Google say, you're wrong? Or they'll say, did you mean this? It took me 10 minutes one time to realize I was misspelling a word, because Google didn't say, don't be stupid, David, learn how to spell the word. Because Google doesn't want to tell me. Google wants to be my friend. And so when you realize that, I will then be put into a tribe with other people who think like me. And so maybe I may be very concerned about vaccinating my children, and I'll find other people who are concerned about vaccinating their children. They'll tell me, it's okay, David, I understand. There are other ways. You don't have to. And I'll feel good. I'll feel trust. I won't have good advice, perhaps, but we have to understand that this is how the trust mechanisms are working today. Now, I'm speaking to a room full of experts, a room full of scientists. How many of you have PhDs in chemistry? Okay, let me do it easier. How many don't have a PhD in chemistry? I worked 15 years for a chemical company, and I know very well that I felt inferior because my PhD wasn't in chemistry. But the point was, you're in part of a community. This is a tribe. Okay, and you know very well, and you think very well like people think elsewhere. Another question maybe I should ask you, how many of you buy lottery tickets? Okay, I'll repeat the question because I don't see any hands. How many of you buy lottery tickets? There's one person. One person, okay. I'm going to talk with you at the break, but somehow you're in the wrong building. This is one of the difficulties today, is that you think in the same way as the people around you. Okay, and well, I've got news for you. Most of the people don't think like you. Okay, somebody's out there buying lottery tickets. I mean, most people out there are numerically illiterate. I found out yesterday we're arrogant, by the way. I'm trying to figure that one out still. We were talking about that last night. But that idea of that the people are numerically illiterate, they will buy a lottery ticket to pay off their credit card debt, is how most people are thinking. That's how the marketing world works. But how is that compared to your own tribe then? Because your idea is quite simple. There are facts out there, you've done the research, you understand it, and you have a solution. Well, that is, I think, a rather narrow, limited tribe of people compared to the large general population. Now, until recently, that wasn't a problem, because we relied on the experts, and the experts were the people who knew these things. And we asked the experts. But as I said, with the blockchain model of trust today, we're no longer asking the experts. We're asking the people in our tribe. Google is telling us what we need for our decisions. So you begin to realize, well, that's not really a problem because the regulators will solve these things. The regulators will manage these things. You may have noticed in the last couple years a trend to reform that process. It's not democratic. Nobody ever said science was democratic, did they? Well, that's the problem today. So what happens then? Well, we have then another issue, and that is that the people in the tribes that are growing, I have my own tribe. I do a blog called The Risk Monger. It's not my tribe. I like to think my tribe is quite active. I generally fight with them quite a bit. But it's only about 10,000 people. That may seem like a lot. Jamie Oliver has about 10 million. So when Jamie Oliver tells you something that organic is better, his tribe hears that a lot louder than any voice I can have, probably a lot louder than any voice in this room. Although I understand now from the speaker before that if you eat organic, you're getting yourself to some dangerous situations. But anyway, I'm not going to touch that. But the question quite simply is, my tribe is quite small. So And the experts are no longer considered valid. We can't trust the experts. Apparently, there's a company that no longer exists that begins with an M, but they apparently went and paid all the experts. They paid all the scientists. They paid, hands up, everyone who's been paid by that company that begins with an M. Okay, well, apparently they say it, and they say it 1,000,000 times, so it must be true. But the point is, we can't trust risk assessments anymore. We have to change the risk assessment now. Well, what do we change it to? Well, we can't trust the experts, but we trust the blockchain. We trust people like us. So you want to think, well, so what do you mean? Well, we'll have citizen panels. And the citizen panels will decide whether or not something should be used or not. Makes sense, right? We're all the same. This is a democratic situation. I mean, we talked about that on Monday night, that if the public wants it, the public wants a new technology in their phone, who is a regulator to stop it? We'll just give it to them. And so we have to understand how a citizen panel will work. They're not experts. How can we have a good, rational decision about public safety, public health, if these people on citizens panels buy lottery tickets to pay off their credit card debt? That doesn't make sense. Well, until you understand what the motive of the people who want the citizens panels are, it's not to improve technology, it's not to increase discovery, it's not to advance science to improve public health. It's to stop it. And so if what your goal is to stop the technology, stop the development, stop these things because they're causing climate change or something else, then you've got to understand it from another point. The precautionary principle has been the tool they've been insisting on. The precautionary principle is not how to lead to better technology, it's how to stop things that we're uncertain about. So a citizen panel will be very simple. Are you certain that this product is safe? Two emotional concepts I can't really begin to define right there, but certainty and safety. And of course, the scientists are, certainty to a certain degree. Well, it depends on the context. No, so you're not certain. Get rid of it. Can you guarantee this is not an endocrine disruptor? Well, I mean, compared to other products that we're using every day, no, you can't. Get rid of it. So we're beginning to see suddenly that the precautionary principle is a very useful tool. Because all you have to do, like a baby, say no. Come back when you're certain, which I think most of the people in this room will know is not really an important point. But there's something else about precaution which is interesting. And that's something that I want to talk to you about. It's a different type of logic. I have my bag. I brought my bag here. I hope you don't mind. I didn't know where else to put it, so I hid it behind. Femi didn't like it, but anyway, sorry, Femi. I brought an umbrella today. It's in my bag. It's always in my bag. And so I love in Belgium when I can do this exercise and it works. It's very rare, but anyway, humorously. So, okay. I know, it's bad luck, right? Well, you guys don't buy lottery tickets anyway, so you're scientists, you should understand. So, was I right? The photographers love this, by the way. It's my Mary Poppins moment. Was I right to bring my umbrella today? For those who don't know, because we're in a dark hall, it's a beautiful sunny day outside. No. I wasn't right to bring my umbrella. Was I wrong to bring my umbrella? No. I'll bring it tomorrow. Even if the forecast tomorrow is for another bright sunny day, I will bring my umbrella. This is a precautionary measure. Now the thing about that, and it's important to realize, is with precaution, not being right is not the same as being wrong. With precaution, you're never wrong. Just really, really not right sometimes. So that's a precautionary logic where it's not a question of right or wrong. Now, you have to see it from your own view, from a scientific logic. If I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Okay, precaution, no, it's not the same. Not being right doesn't mean you're wrong. It's just being careful, just being safe. Better safe than sorry. Now, one of the problems that many people have in this room is if they think they're right, they then think they have the right. Okay, and that gets into a lot of issues because people may understand that you're right, may understand you're safe, but, well, no thank you, I don't want this technology. But it's going to save lives. Not my problem. And so you have to understand we're dealing with another type of logic here. And that's where we're getting into challenges. So when we speak in these terms, and we understand the terms of trust are different, we begin to see that the world that you probably understood when you were doing your studies has changed. And are you ready for those changes? Well, precaution has done something more diabolical than that, I'm afraid. And this gets rather hard to speak about. I've got a piece, well, I hope to finish this piece someday. It's been on my computer for about 6 months. But essentially, one of the problems with precaution, more than anything else, at least the version of precaution that we're now celebrating the 20th anniversary of next year, which is the David G. version. David G. wrote Late Lessons from Early Warnings. And his definition of precaution essentially is the reversal of the burden of proof. Until you can prove that this technology is safe, once again, certainty, safety, good luck, you cannot have it approved. Once again, the citizens panels have no problem removing this. So science is guilty until proven innocent with a new technology. What does this mean? Well, after 20 years of applying this mentality, we're beginning to see that your world, the discoveries you may have, the developments and solutions you may provide for society, they're not welcome. In fact, if you look at precaution today, the idea of precaution is we have to stop doing things that we have been doing. The people on the streets for the Extinction Rebellion are not saying, help us, science. We need science to solve the problems. We need science to create new discoveries to help us find solutions. They're not saying that. They're saying, stop flying, stop eating meat, stop industry, stop banking. Okay, their view is, take a precautionary approach. In our own field, if we talk about weed resistance to herbicides, the solution is stop using herbicides. You're using too many herbicides, that's why we have to stop. Probably the biggest crisis we have today facing humanity is antimicrobial resistance. So the solution, not develop new discoveries, find new solutions, help save humanity because we're facing a crisis of a new superbug that's going to wipe us out. No, the solution after 20 years of precaution is quite simple. Stop using antibiotics. So we have now this precautionary logic morph into a precautionary mentality, which is saying that scientists are not going to provide the solution. Scientists created the problems. Okay. Somewhere in this room, I'm sure there's another Fraser Stoddard. There's another potential Nobel laureate. You've got the greatest minds in this room who would be able to solve something like antimicrobial resistance, be able to create that new herbicide that's going to be able to allow farmers to continue. But there's nobody who's going to allow you to continue because the view is quite simple. We need citizens panels to stop these things. We need governments now to solve these problems. Little Greta is sitting outside of the Swedish parliament because she wants the government to solve the problems. She doesn't want industry to find a new technology. Okay. This is the problem we have today, is that people who are complaining, they want a new government led by citizens panels to get everyone to stop doing what was causing, in their views, the problems. It's not really the solutions I think you were trained for. And I'm pretty sure the solutions that are in this room should be allowed to go forward. And that's a real problem. Let me give you another story, and I'm going to wrap up with this as well. Last year, again, I was training for the Mont Blanc. I don't know why I keep doing these things, but anyway. And so it was in July, and I was doing the usual. I was in good shape, a lot better than I am now, by the way. And one day I woke up after it was a pretty good training, and I didn't feel that well. The next day I woke up, I couldn't walk. Now imagine an ultra runner who couldn't walk, okay, just emotionally. It was sudden. I was misdiagnosed as having a herniated disc, and for about 2 months, I was suffering excruciating pain, night drenching. Essentially what I had was quite a severe infection. That was in July. For 8 months, I was battling the infection. And the whole point was, I tried 5 different courses of antibiotics. Finally, one seemed to work. My doctor said, quite simply, you know, David, that would have killed a normal person. You're lucky you were in good shape. All of my friends were saying, you got that infection by running up mountains, you idiot. But the whole point is, we're more and more facing vulnerabilities today. We're more and more having this problem that the medicines and technologies that were developed 30, 40 years ago, in the case of antibiotics, it's even worse. I don't think there's any new products in the pipeline in phase 3 testing at the moment. And the only solution we're giving is no more antibiotics. So we have to understand it from a point that the scientific approach isn't working because we're not giving the scientists the opportunity to go out and discover and to develop these products. The precautionary cancer is spreading. So I was lucky. I was strong enough. Normally people will get infections after an operation. And we speak about how people die. When they say someone died of pneumonia, they didn't die of pneumonia. They died because no antibiotics were working to prevent them. We have to understand how many people are actually dying from these issues. So what you have to do, I'm going to leave you with this thought, is you have to stop being in the lab dealing with the solutions, because the solutions you develop in the lab aren't going to get out of the lab. Okay. You have the means. I'm sure there's the means in this room, the brilliance, the number of PhDs, the number of chemists in this room. There are people who are going to be able to solve these problems. But the culture out there, the blockchain culture, which is basically not trusting anyone they don't understand and wanting to move to a precautionary basis of getting rid of everything that they feel was the problem, means that these solutions may not get out. You have to leave the lab for the lobby. The farmers have to leave the land for the lobby. You have to start standing up for science, for the chance to solve the problems. You can't continue to take the point, well, okay, they're not going to let us do this, so never mind. 2 more good years or 3 more good years of your product on the market is not a solution. It's basically saying that we're simply letting the solutions go away. I'm going to keep fighting as much as I can for the chance for scientists to be able to discover, scientists to be able to have these solutions. And that's important for me. I want you to join me because there aren't enough people doing that. 2 weeks ago, the pain came back. So the infection's back, and there's no other antibiotics for me. I need you to be able to find something for me. Thank you.
David, thank you. When did you decide that this keynote was the right one for this conference?
This morning. It's the nice thing about not having slides. You can decide on the mood, you can decide on the room.
What did you, let's put the lights up. You know the drill, because we've got a couple of minutes with David.
Okay.
And I know people like to talk to him. I felt that that was such a wide-ranging keynote that they can ask you many different things. So feel free to do that. When I hear that tap on the top of the microphone, I know you're ready, so that I can actually look at David here. So you were here all this week, or most of this week, so you were picking up on conversations that people were really caring about. And then you put the keynote together, and then you picked up on those points. One of them was how scientists communicate and the image that scientists can have. And you wove that into your keynote. Can you unpack that a little bit more? Because it sounded like you disagreed with the idea that scientists were maybe not the most approachable.
Well, I think, I mean, it was quite funny, the conversation that you were having last night, and it was almost like everyone thought scientists are arrogant. I don't think scientists are arrogant. I think the idea is that they're used to communicating with each other, and they don't have the patience sometimes to explain to somebody else. And the vaccine story is a good example. If someone says, well, I'm thinking of not vaccinating my child, people start to panic. And there's, don't be stupid, vaccinate! And of course, that doesn't work if somebody's feeling a sense of vulnerability. Now, I'm not saying that as scientists you have to go and hug your sister-in-law to make sure she's going to vaccinate your niece. But at the same time, I think there is that sense that we have to understand that not everybody thinks the same way, and not everyone's willing to listen. Yeah.
Good morning. David, two things. First one, the lottery I'm playing is supporting social activities in the community.
Okay. You're forgiven.
Okay. And the second thing is, why are people requesting 100% safety from crop protection? Is because they are not aware of the benefits of it. People are accepting risk, drinking alcohol, driving cars, flying planes, do whatever, sports, running up mountains, because they think it's good for them and they are willing to take the risk. In crop protection, they just see that it's possible to do everything in organic, at least from their perspective. And so they ask themselves, why is it done? And they think it's all about bad corporate, big companies want to earn money.
I mean, indeed, the story is the story and the narrative that's been painted by a lot of people. I know quite a few people in groups like Corporate Europe Observatory. They all smoke and drink, but they'll talk about organic. In fact, a lot of young people, it's the same thing. And there's a contradiction. There's a contradiction quite simply because a person may take a cigarette or a drink because they feel they're in control. It's their decision. A good part of risk perception is agency. And if I'm in control and I'm used to it, it's familiar, I trust it. I'm not in control of what happens to my food if I feel that there's something going on. And of course, there are a large number of organizations that benefit and profit from Project Fear. And I think it's, it's a danger, I think, in a lot of marketing circles to see how people play this game to create a luxury product which they can then retail at a higher price. It's affecting farmers. It's a sad situation, I think, all around.
Hi, David. You're Canadian, right? And yet you know the corridors of power in Brussels pretty well.
They
right?
know me.
And they know you, right? How much of what you described would you say is actually more typical European or Brussels bubble? Is this a global trend? Is there an element of inward-looking nature from Europe? And just wanted to see how much, what your idea is. Is Europe setting a trend for global to follow? Or is there a potential for a counter move where at some point in time, actually, the rest of the world will continue with or without Europe?
That's a hard question to answer. I think one of the things I find is that Europe has been placed in the handcuffs of not just precaution, but particularly with Sustainable Use Directive with the hazard-based approach, which if you were to ask any regulator what they feel about this, they'd feel, I can't, but this is all we have. We can't do anything else but this. But that has created an interest for people across the world. I referred to the people coming from the US to campaign against glyphosate, to ban GMOs in the US as carpetbaggers, because it's much easier for them to affect the policy in Brussels than it is in Washington. So we're not facing just simply some French peasants associations who don't want CRISPR. We're facing a large global body that figures if we can ban it in Europe, we can stop trade. And that's a much more effective way. Now, that's a cynical approach to say that, but there are a lot of activists that simply, it's about winning. They don't care about facts. They don't care about nature. I mean, the Green Party that wants to ban nuclear doesn't care about the climate. You know, the people who want to ban glyphosate don't care about conservation agriculture and soil, soil management. That's a religion, and they're coming to Brussels to preach their religion now because the precautionary principle makes that easy. Sorry, it's a dark answer.
Yeah, it is. But so, I mean, the theme of scientists becoming better communicators with non-scientists has been discussed this week quite a bit. And so, I guess my question is with regards to what is the most effective way of doing that. In the past, I always thought, well, in order for us to be able to communicate, you have to have at least be on the same platform, so get the level of education up to a certain level that they understand the things you're trying to communicate. But I don't think that's very effective. At least it hasn't been my personal opinion. And then I veered towards just kind of a cop-out. When they ask me, what do you do for a living? I say, I'm an organic chemist. And I didn't lie, right? But that doesn't really solve the problem either, right? That's me just taking advantage of their misconceptions. But so what is the most effective way for a scientist to communicate with non-scientists?
This is one of the things, I've been working on this for more than 2 decades now, and I have to say I like to consider myself a researcher in this because I'm always testing out different things. And with the advent of social media, you begin to realize that scientists can reach out to their sister-in-laws. They can reach out to the regulators. They can reach out to the consumers. But what I'm also curious about is whether they do or not. Just to give you an example, I created an experiment recently for the European parliamentary elections where it's quite horrifying when you look at the level of science illiteracy that's going on in the European Parliament in the last 5 years. So I wrote something called the Science Charter. And many scientists agreed right away, 10 simple steps that every MEP candidate could commit to. And the logic was very simple. I want you to be able to send this charter, this little image, this meme, to every person in your area who's running, to put science back on the debate and let the communities and the tribes have this discussion about science rather than have it about immigration or glyphosate as a means to decide who your next MEP is going to be. Scientists thought this was great. I had it translated voluntarily into 10 languages on the first weekend, and I was promoting it. But the scientists aren't going to the next step. They're not, because I thought 3% of the European population would be enough to create a scientific discussion that could control and in a sense, dominate the issue for the next European Parliament election. But the scientists have to do the next step, which is to step up. And that's the harder part. And so I'm experimenting, I'm testing, I'm researching. So now the next point is, we know logically it's possible. How do we get out of the lab and into the lobby? Or off the land and into the lobby? How to get your voice heard?
David, that's a really good segue into Nathan's question. Do you think we can increase the crop protection tribe, and if so, how?
Well, we're having fewer farmers, and what we've been discussing this week as well is we're no longer having our grandparents as farmers. People are no longer in touch with the farm, and that's one of the real challenges. I can remember I went on a speaking tour among farms in southern England for a week. It was fantastic. I had a great time, and I was trying to get the farmers to get them to use Twitter more, and to be able to get involved and to communicate, because people love the story of farming. Everyone's interested to know where their food comes from, and a farmer who can simply, from his combine, show what he's doing, people are interested in that. So I gave the same message, a bit of a stump speech all week. And I can remember one farmer saying, well, that's good. That means I have to get a computer. So we've got to find a way to get the farmers to communicate more. There are some very good farmers.
You could just get a really nice phone.
Yeah, exactly. The idea is we have got to get the farmers to tell their story more. And I think this is really one of the good news stories, that we're able to feed the world with fewer inputs, fewer people, less land, more yield. And the people who want the opposite because of some ideological sort of cultist religion have to understand that these farmers are not doing this because they hate nature or hate the public. In fact, they're feeding this to their kids.
You told part of your story this morning. It's very personal. A lot of people will be quite surprised to hear that. Tell us how you are right now.
I'm in pain.
Right.
It hurts.
And what is it? Because you asked for you asked for people to help you, but how do they actually help you?
We have to stop thinking the age of affluence means that we're all okay. Okay, and the idea, right now we're able to ban all these substances because we can still we're comfortable enough to feed ourselves. We can still, remove a lot of the technologies because there's something else that we can still use. And we don't think about developing countries where they are not in that situation. And we're even assuming, for example, that Africans can do better without agrotechnology, or we can assume that everything is like that because we're so lucky. We are so close. This age of affluence and well-being, and we're living longer, we're so close to having this turned upside down, and it just takes a few stupid things by a few stupid people, to put us back. And I know very well how vulnerable we are. We are facing, particularly with antimicrobial resistance, what I'm fighting. It's not a sexy disease, but I know the pain and suffering. I know what it causes. And when I find somebody else, because I'm in hospitals a lot, and I find somebody else, I ask them, so what's your pain scale today? Because painkillers don't work either, and it is not something that we can just sit back and say, it'll be all right, Femi. It's not going to be all right. We're in a situation where we can just let precaution take over and give up on scientific discovery and development. Now, one person like that.
It's not really a painkiller, but it does make you feel good.
Yeah, it is.
Chocolate, David?
Thank you so much, Femi. Thank you.
I am thinking that come the break, I don't know if you're touchy-feely, but you're going to get a few hugs.
Okay, thank you.
David, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Femi. Thank you.